Hey everybody, let me talk in this video about function. When we talk about function, we need to do a block of code, or we call block of code more than one time from more than one place. So we don't want to repeat it, so we add this block and function, then we call it. Like example function, you do it for some operation, multiplication and more. Let me show you what I'm saying by that. Let me create a simple class. I name it function simple, and here you go. I just create this one method. If you remember from previous example that we did in nested for, this example was this two loops for draw something. So if I run it, if you don't forget, I draw this thing. So let me just take this code and add it in my function. So now I want to run this code. I will see this stars. Imagine I want to repeat this draw 4 times. That means I have this one draw. So I want to repeat this one 4 times. So how I do it? I should do 1, 2, 3, 4. So when I now run it, I will see the graph 4 times. This first, second, third, fourth. And this does not make sense because you have 4 code, and now if you want to update in one of them, you need to go through 4 blocks and update it. This will cost time for maintenance. So it's better to do it in function. So how to do that? Let me remove all this. And let me take this code. I say, okay, this code I called for more than one time. Just take this code, I define function. So how I define the function? First of all, I define which type of data this function will return. This function will not return anything. So I will say void. Void means this function will not return anything. Then the function name, I will say draw. Okay. Then you give the input parameter. So which parameter this function will receive? This function will not receive anything, just drawing. So I will not give it anything. I will open a bracket, then add this code. If you see now I have this code for drawing, but inside the function. Now to call this function inside my code, it's really easy. You just go here, give the new, write new, the class name, then open a bracket, close it, then dot the function name. If you see directory, he give us a draw. Now I could call the function draw. Why I say the name of the class? Because here is static. We will talk about the static later. So now in simple easy way, you say new, then name of your class, then you call it draw. If you don't want to write all this function have to be also static. Void static, because you cannot call static from outside, like static void, sorry. So you cannot call, because this is static, any method should be static. But I don't want to do this method static, so I have to do it here also in same way. So let me just go back, and here we go, dot draw. Okay, that's what I mean by static and other. I will talk about static later. I want to draw it 4 times, just copy this line, again. So 4 times I call it. Now if I just rerun it again, I will see same result. If you see, I have first draw, second, 3, 4. If I want to do it 5, add 5 and run it, you will see it 5 times. So if you see, here is it. So this is a basic example I could show you why we do function, because it helps us. So it's really easy. When application come across this line, he say, hey, there's a function will be called. The code will goes here and try to execute line by line. So let me show you how. Just add bracket, because the function a little bit complex for some people, but I think it should be easy now in this video. If you see, when the application come across this line, if I click, I have a step over and a step into. You know, step over, if you click it, you will not go through the details. You just execute the code. But I want to go through the details now, so I click step into. If you see, just create a new instance, then object, then here you go. He called the draw method, then he will start drawing for us. So this is the basic example or how we could work with functions. So let me continue and do more with function. So imagine I want to do function for sum 2 numbers. So how you do that? You need to sum numbers. So you think the result will be float. So the return result, you say float. Okay. Then what the name of the function? I say sum. What's the parameter this function will take? It will take 2 parameters, float n1 and float n2. If you see, when you have input parameter, you write the parameter type, then name, then you add this colon, then other parameter, then its name. Then you open a bracket, close it. Now this take do summation between two numbers. Now I want to do sum, so I have to have a variable for a float for sum equal number 1 plus number 2, then return sum. So why return sum? Because, and why here we don't have return this method? You see, this method doesn't have return because this method void. That means he will not return anything. So I don't have to add return. But here I define the data type should return it. If I say float, the data type that returned from this method have to be float. So therefore the sum is a float. So when I return float, will be float. So because I have return data, I have to write return for that data. If I have string, the return data should be string. If I have integer, the return data should be integer. Now I have a float, the return data is sum, and the sum is a float. So just summing to number, and here we're done. Now let me call this method. It's for sum to number. It's really easy. You just now to sum to number. Let me add it here. This for draw, and let me write for sum. Okay. You say dot sum. You need to sum. If you see, he asks you for two numbers, number 1 and number 3. Let me suppose I will sum 3 with 9. Okay, and the result should be float also. There is a result coming, so I say r equal. Why I say float r? Because there is a result coming from this method. When I call this method, I'll send two number 3 and 7. This is 3 and 7 should send it to the sum, and sum take 3 and 7, add them, and will return for us the result of the summation. All this line will have a result, so I will take this result and add it here in the r. So now if I say SYSO, I just save it. I say sum equal, then add a plus for the r. If I run it again, now if you see, just go first line, sum equal 12, because 9 plus 3 is 12. I say 9 plus 9 should be 18. If I go up, sum equal 18. So if you see simple function, now you want to repeat this operation for more than one. Let me suppose do another summation, but the result between 9 and 12, that's really easy, and you print this. If you see, I now have first sum and second sum, just calling method 2 times. That's easy. That's okay to call method more than 1 time, and that's okay to have more than one method. If you see I have a draw now here and I have summation here. So the basic thing you have to remember about the method, just you say, if you don't have return data, you say void, then you give the name. If you have return data, you give the data type that you want to return it, then the name of the function. If you have input, you say input data type name, input data type name, then continue. If you don't have input, you will not pass anything. Then because you have return, we have to return something. We could add any code here. Also, if you see, when I called method doesn't have any input, I just call it directory, saying, for example, draw open bracket close, because I will not set anything. But this summation now will receive 2 numbers, so I have to send the 2 number. Here we're done, and see you next.